Hello, friends, and welcome back to another quiet journey into the corners of history that rarely make the headlines, yet somehow echo inside our own lives today. Tonight, I invite you to settle in, breathe a little slower, and let yourself be carried gently into a world that looks soft and pastel on the outside. Hums with pressures most of us would find overwhelming. This is the world of the 1,950 seconds American housewife. A place where freshly waxed floors, perfect lipstick, and polite smiles were not just goals, but expectations woven into the fabric of everyday life. Let us ease into it together. Imagine, for a moment, standing at the edge of a perfectly trimmed lawn in mid-century suburbia. The houses are lined up like rows of polite greetings. Every driveway is clean, every mailbox polished, and every curtain somehow pressed into crisp, flawless folds. From a distance, the neighborhood feels peaceful, almost serene, the kind of place where nothing ever goes wrong. But step closer, and you begin to notice the quiet tension running beneath the surface. Behind those doors, women are rising before sunrise, managing homes with the precision of factory managers and smiling as if nothing weighs on their minds at all. In this world, motherhood is not simply a role. It is a performance, a standard, a stage on which you are expected to excel every single day without ever admitting you are tired, overwhelmed, or unsure. And the pressure to maintain that image of calm, beauty, and effortless competence is something that shaped not only individual lives, but an entire generation of women. Let us walk through an ordinary morning. The sun has not fully risen yet, and the house is still, but the quiet is deceptive. In these early hours, a 1,950 seconds mother is already awake, long before the rest of her family opens their eyes. She moves through a kitchen filled with pastel appliances and magazine-approved decor, brewing coffee strong enough to keep her upright, and mentally reviewing a list of tasks that would exhaust most modern schedules. Everything needs to be done, and everything needs to look easy. Her day begins not in leisure, but in obligation. There is breakfast to prepare, lunches to pack, floors to sweep, and children to shepherd from sleepiness into school readiness. There is no space to say she needs 5 more minutes. There is no, I will get to it later. The culture she lives in has shaped a kind of invisible script she must follow, one built on the idea that a good mother is always ready, always cheerful, and always composed. This expectation did not appear out of nowhere. After World War II, American society leaned heavily into a vision of home life that promised security and happiness. Advertisements told women that the key to a successful family was a spotless kitchen, a well-prepared dinner, and a smile that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Magazines themselves ran endless articles describing what a good wife did before her husband even opened the front door. Television shows reinforced the same idea, presenting fictional mothers who glided through their days with ease, never losing their patience, never showing signs of stress. And so, millions of real women internalized these ideals, believing that perfection was not just hoped for, it was required. But here's where the story becomes something deeper and more honest. Because behind every perfectly pressed dress and polished table was a woman juggling far more than anyone outside her home could see. She was expected to manage the emotional atmosphere of her family, keeping everyone content, calm, and well-behaved. She was expected to cook meals that were nutritious, appealing, and on time. She was expected to scrub floors, shine sinks, wash mountains of laundry, and make sure everything in the house looked company ready, even if no one ever visited that day. She had to do all of this without the modern tools we take for granted. No microwaves, no ready-made meals, No lightweight appliances. A vacuum cleaner weighed as much as a modern suitcase. Laundry required. Lifting heavy tubs of water. Scrubbing stains by hand. And wrestling with machines that rattled across the floor. Cleaning products were harsh, time-consuming, and often ineffective. Yet, the expectation remained. The house must always be immaculate. Even more quietly, there was another layer: emotional restraint. A 1,950 seconds. Mother could not show frustration. She could not say she felt lonely or overwhelmed. She could not admit she needed a break. Instead, she was encouraged to push through, to keep smiling, to maintain the appearance of steady, cheerful control. Society rewarded her for hiding her exhaustion, and because everyone else seemed to be doing the same, she assumed she was alone in her struggle. You can picture it. A housewife standing in her kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of a clock, and the soft, distant rustle of her children waking up. Her mind is already racing with responsibilities, yet she must remain calm, composed, and cheerful. The weight of it is not loud. It is subtle. It sits in the shoulders, in the steady tightening of the jaw, in the smile she gives at breakfast even when she feels like she has not slept enough to be human. And it does not stop when the morning rush ends. The pressure follows her into every corner of the day. If the neighbors drop by unexpectedly, and they often did, her home must be ready. If her children misbehave in public, she feels responsible for the judgment in other people's eyes. If her husband comes home tired, she is expected to soothe the atmosphere with warmth and calmness. It is an emotional marathon disguised as daily routine. And yet, despite the weight of these pressures, she rarely voiced them, because the social environment around her did not encourage vulnerability. Instead, it rewarded resilience that looked effortless. If she let the facade slip even a little, she risked being labeled ungrateful, dramatic, or failing at her primary purpose. To look perfect, to act perfect, to speak perfectly, to raise perfect children, to maintain a perfect home, to be the emotional anchor of an entire family, all without showing that the effort was immense. And here is where the true emotional center of this story emerges. These women were not weak. They were not fragile. They were incredibly strong, but in a quiet, uncelebrated way. Their strength was the kind that did not shout or demand recognition. It was the strength of endurance, the strength of waking up every day and doing the work again, the strength of managing a household, raising children, caring for a partner, and navigating a maze of silent expectations that pressed on them from every direction. By looking at their lives through a softer lens, one filled with empathy instead of judgment, we begin to see that the pastel colors of the 1,950 seconds were not just aesthetic choices. They were masks. They were a kind of cultural wallpaper pasted over exhaustion, over unspoken fears, over internal contradictions. And yet, beneath that wallpaper lived millions of women with hopes, frustrations, dreams, and a longing for something more human than perfection. Tonight, as we slowly walk into their world, we are not doing it to point fingers or to laugh at old advertisements. We are doing it to understand the emotional landscape that shaped so many lives, perhaps even the lives of our mothers and grandmothers. And through their stories, we gain insight into how expectations still ripple into the present day, quietly shaping how we think about work, family, and our own definitions of success. So, let us move gently, thoughtfully, and with compassion. Because behind every immaculate 1,950 seconds home was a woman carrying far more than her society ever acknowledged. And tonight, we are going to finally look beneath the surface. If the 1,950 seconds housewife's day began with silent expectations, then the second movement of her daily symphony was pure, unfiltered chaos wrapped in pastel colors, softened by polite smiles, and powered by a mixture of caffeine, adrenaline, and whatever her doctor casually prescribed that month. This is the hour where her calm facade meets real-world turbulence. Hungry children, a demanding household, and a culture that expects her to glide through it all with the grace of a movie star. Let us step gently into that moment. The house, still caught between darkness and the first splash of morning light, begins to stir. A mother stands in the kitchen rubbing sleep from her eyes, feeling the subtle jitteriness that comes from too little rest and too many worries waiting for her. The coffee pot is empty, drained earlier by her husband who woke, ate, dressed, and left in a compact, efficient routine that requires almost nothing from him and everything from her. She boils more water, taps the bottom of the instant coffee tin, and hopes the remaining granules will be enough to carry her until noon. The house awakens slowly at first, with the ticking clock and the faint hum of appliances. But soon, like a wave building in the distance, the morning erupts. Upstairs, children begin calling her name before they are even fully awake. Someone has misplaced a shoe. Someone else refuses to wear the sweater she ironed the night before. The youngest is crying because they dreamed of monsters. The oldest is suddenly remembering a school assignment due today, something involving glue, cardboard, and the emotional energy of an entire classroom project. Yet through all this, she must remain composed, controlled, cheerful. This is where the chemical fuel of the 1,950 seconds steps into the picture. Doctors during this era often prescribed appetite suppressants, stimulants, and pep pills to tired mothers with the same casual ease. They recommended drinking more water. These medications were marketed as modern miracles tools, designed to help women stay energetic, productive, and pleasant. There were pills for the morning, pills for the afternoon slump, pills for nerves, and pills to help her sleep. After everything else, in magazines and doctors' offices, stimulants like amphetamine tablets were described as safe, clean, efficient helpers, little boosts to keep up with laundry, cooking, and constant childcare. No one warned about side effects. No one explained addiction. No one even questioned whether a mother's exhaustion might be the natural result of doing the work of 3 people every single day. So when she reaches into the cabinet and takes one small tablet with her first sip of coffee, it does not feel dangerous. It feels normal, expected, part of the toolkit for survival. Within 20 minutes, the effects begin to hum beneath her skin. Her thoughts sharpen, her movements speed up, and suddenly she can do everything at once. Flip pancakes, braid hair, wipe down counters, and answer 3 questions at the same time. She begins the intricate dance of feeding everyone: breakfast, eggs for her husband, cereal for the children, toast for herself if she remembers. Though, more often, she simply survives on caffeine and momentum. Breakfast, in a 1,950 seconds household, is not a gentle, peaceful moment. It is a theatrical production, with her backstage, ensuring props are in place and actors are hitting their cues. Her husband sits at the table reading the newspaper, expecting hot coffee to materialize in front of him. The children chatter, complain, negotiate, and drop spoons onto the floor like tiny thunderclaps. She moves quickly, almost invisibly, refilling milk, buttering toast, wiping spills before anyone notices. She does not have time to wonder if she is hungry. She barely has time to sit. And yet, according to the cultural script of the era, She must smile. Because smiling means everything is under control. Smiling means she is a good mother. Smiling means she is doing exactly what she should be doing. And of course, if she feels overwhelmed, if she feels tired beyond words, if she feels the weight of daily responsibility pressing into her ribs, well, there is a pill for that too. Her doctor will refill the prescription without asking many questions. Friends will nod knowingly if she mentions feeling a little wired, because they have all been prescribed the same little helpers. This is how chemical fuel becomes part of the rhythm of her day. Once the family is fed, she moves on to the next impossible challenge, getting everyone out the door. Shoes must be tied. Lunchboxes must be packed. School bags checked. Small arguments diffused. Tears soothed. Spills wiped. Tempers calmed. All before 8 a.m. And in these frantic minutes, her mind does not drift toward her own needs. It focuses only on maintaining order, avoiding judgment, keeping things running smoothly. She must send her family into the world looking polished, prepared, and calm, because their appearance reflects her competence. If the children are late, disheveled, or cranky, it is not a reflection on them. It is a reflection on her. It is no wonder stimulant use became so common. Imagine standing in that kitchen, pastel surfaces, gleaming appliances, a bright radio jingle, playing something relentlessly cheerful while feeling your pulse run fast beneath your skin. The stimulant makes everything sharper. It gives her the energy she desperately needs, but also a sense of urgency that adds tension to every small task. She wipes crumbs from the table, double-checks homework folders, and adjusts collars. She loads the children into the car with a hurried kiss, smoothing flyaway hair and straightening jackets with automatic movements. The engine rumbles to life, heavy and loud. Seatbelts have not been invented yet, and the car smells faintly of gasoline and yesterday's cigarette smoke. She navigates potholes and traffic while negotiating sibling disputes in the back seat. She parks quickly, guiding the children to the school entrance with a mixture of affection and exhaustion. When she finally returns home, alone for the first time all morning, she stands in the kitchen and breathes out a long, quiet sigh, the first moment of stillness since her alarm rang in the dark. The house looks messy again, despite her efforts. Crumbs on the counter, dishes in the sink, damp towels left behind, toys forgotten. Another wave of work waits for her, but at least she has a few minutes to gather herself. Her hands tremble slightly from the stimulant. The caffeine hums. Her heart feels too fast for a moment. Some women describe the sensation as focus. Others describe it as jitters, but all describe it as necessary. And yet, no magazine article from the time would ever admit why so many women relied on these chemical boosts. Advertisements spoke of pep, vitality, mental clarity, and renewed cheerfulness. As if these phrases could cover the truth, the pace of her life was unsustainable without artificial fuel. But here is the most human part. She was not weak for needing help. She was not broken. She was doing the work of several people all at once, inside a system that gave her no rest, no understanding, and no outlet to express how draining it truly was. The morning was not just chaos. It was proof of her resilience. Her strength was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, enduring, the kind of strength that sometimes shakes slightly under the surface, but still continues forward, because she knows her family depends on her, because she wants them to be happy, because she wants to believe she is enough, even when the world demands more than any one person can give. And so, as the morning sun climbs a little higher, she pours herself another cup of coffee, wipes down the table again, and prepares for the long stretch of day ahead, cleaning, cooking, organizing, and maintaining the image of effortless perfection that the world expects from her. Her story is not about weakness. It is about survival, and about the quiet, unspoken truth that sometimes even the strongest people need help just to make it through the morning. If the morning rush was a storm, then what followed was something quieter, but just as relentless, a kind of never-ending labor loop that defined the life of a 1,950 seconds housewife. Once the children were at school, and the breakfast dishes stacked in the sink, she entered the longest and most invisible part of her day: cleaning, tidying, repairing, folding, dusting, scrubbing, polishing, straightening, organizing, and somehow making all of it look effortless. But the truth is, nothing about this part of her life was effortless. Let us step with her into this stretch of the morning, when the house looks still from the outside, but inside she is moving constantly. The moment she closes the front door after dropping off the children, she does not rest. She does not sit down. She does not give herself time to recover from the chaos of breakfast. Instead, she heads straight to the sink, rolling up her sleeves as if preparing for battle. A pile of dishes greets her plates, smeared with eggs, cups stained with coffee, silverware sticky with syrup. There is no dishwasher humming quietly next to her. There is just her, the hot water, and her determination to stay ahead of the day. She scrubs each plate by hand, dries them one by one, and places them back into the cupboards in the exact order she believes a perfect home requires. While she washes, her mind races. She remembers the laundry waiting in the hamper. She remembers the living room rug that needs beating. She remembers that she promised herself she would polish the silverware today because guests might come tomorrow. Instead of easing her mind, these thoughts stack like bricks, silent reminders that the day's work is only beginning, and the house seems determined to undo her work as quickly as she completes it. As soon as the dishes are put away, she notices crumbs under the tablecloth. She kneels to wipe them up and realizes the floor needs sweeping too. She grabs the broom, but sweeping reveals dust under the furniture. Dusting reveals fingerprints on the windows. Cleaning the windows reveals streaks on the appliances. Every task births another, like a chain reaction without an end. To maintain a spotless home in the 1,950 seconds is to chase perfection that moves faster than she does. And society does not help her. Advertisements in glossy magazines show spotless kitchens, sparkling countertops, and women who somehow clean all day yet never look tired, sweaty, or frustrated. These images are not just aspirational, they are instructional. They whisper to her that a spotless home is the measure of her worth, the proof that she is doing her job correctly. So she pushes herself a little harder. Let us go to the laundry room, or sometimes just the corner of the basement, where a washing machine chugs loudly like a restless animal. It is not like today's machines. It does not gently handle clothes with quiet efficiency. It rattles, shakes, and sometimes walks itself across the floor. She has to guide it back into place, one hand on the machine, the other lifting heavy wet clothing into a metal basin. Then comes the wringer, two thick rollers that press water out of each garment. It is dangerous, heavy, and unforgiving. Women have caught fingers, sleeves, even hair in these rollers. She feeds shirts through it, careful not to push too close, watching as the machine squeezes each item flat. After that, she carries the dripping pieces outside to line dry in the sun. On humid days, nothing dries well. On rainy days, everything takes twice as long. But it must get done. Because by the time the children return from school, New clothes will be dirty again, and the cycle will start over. And remember, she is doing all of this alone. The modern idea of shared responsibility did not exist in her world. Husbands worked outside the home and believed their job ended the moment they stepped inside the door. Children were taught to stay out of the way. The house was her domain, her burden, her responsibility. Even on days when exhaustion made her vision blur slightly, she kept moving. Her to-do list is not written on paper, it is written in the walls themselves. Vacuuming, which she performs with a machine so heavy it could double as a piece of gym equipment. Dusting shelves, cabinets, baseboards, and picture frames. Polishing wooden furniture until it gleams. Scrubbing bathrooms with harsh chemicals that sting her eyes and irritate her hands. Shaking out rugs on the back porch, the cloth snapping loudly as dust fills the air around her. Each chore is physical. Each chore demands strength. Each chore must be completed before she can even think about starting dinner. And still, it never feels like enough. Her mind stays tangled in quiet worries. What if someone drops by and sees dust on the piano? What if her husband comes home and smells something burnt? What if the children's teacher notices their socks are not perfectly white? These anxieties are not vanity. They are the result of a culture that judged women for the smallest imperfections in their homes. She lives inside a social microscope where every detail is evidence of her success or failure. And yet, even while she feels the pressure, she hides the weight of it. Her role demands invisibility, invisible labor, invisible exhaustion, invisible frustration. She performs the work of a laborer, a cleaner, a cook, a nanny, a manager, and a caretaker, all while carrying the expectation of constant gentleness and gratitude. If she pauses, she feels guilty. If she rests, she worries that she is falling behind. If she finishes one room, she sees what still needs to be done in another. And when she looks around, she does not see what she accomplished. She sees what is not perfect yet. But here's the most human part. She takes pride in her home. Not because society told her to, but because this is the heart of her family's life. This space is where her children grow, where her husband decompresses, where birthdays are celebrated, where memories are created. She knows the home matters. She knows her work has meaning. But meaning does not make the labor lighter. Her days are a loop, a cycle with no clear stopping point. The house never says thank you. The chores never say you are done. The labor never acknowledges her effort. And as she moves from room to room, her energy slowly drains, leaving behind a quiet ache in her back, her hands, her mind. By noon, she feels the fatigue settling into her shoulders. By early afternoon, her heart beats a little too fast from the morning stimulant. By late afternoon, she begins to feel the crash, the hollow tiredness that comes after hours of exertion. But she does not slow down, because the day is far from over. This invisible labor, this endless cycle of chores, is the part of her life history often overlooks. Yet it is the backbone of her daily existence, the hours that shape her emotional world more than any magazine, advertisement, or sitcom ideal ever could. Her strength is not loud. It is repetitive, steady, uncelebrated, and deeply human. If the chores of the 1,950 seconds housewife were endless, then the pressure from the outside world was just as relentless. Because in that era, the home was not just a private space, it was a stage. And at any moment, the curtain could rise without warning. This brings us to one of the most quietly stressful parts of a mid-century woman's life, the constant possibility of visitors. Doorbells, neighbors, salesmen, relatives, church acquaintances, charity canvassers, school representatives, and even traveling product demonstrators. Any one of them could appear at her doorstep at any hour of the day. And for her, every knock was a test. Let us step into that fragile, watchful atmosphere. It is late morning. She is halfway through folding laundry, humming gently under her breath, sweat gathering at the back of her neck from the heat of the ironing board. She is wearing house clothes, not her nice dress, not her carefully arranged makeup, just something comfortable for scrubbing floors and wrangling dust bunnies. Then the doorbell rings. Her heart jumps. She freezes for a moment, glancing around the room. A stray sock lies on the floor. The ironing board is unfolded, its electrical cord loosely curled like a sleeping snake. There is a streak of dust on the coffee table she meant to wipe earlier. Nothing is guest ready. Nothing is magazine perfect. But she has seconds to decide. Does she answer the door as she is, or does she perform? She chooses the performance. She wipes her hands quickly on her apron. She smooths her hair. She rearranges the laundry pile so it looks less chaotic. She forces a smile she hopes looks relaxed instead of panicked. Then she opens the door. Standing on the porch might be a neighbor who just happened to be walking by, or a salesman offering a new vacuum, or someone from the church inviting her to a potluck. She must greet each one warmly, politely, and with a grace that feels increasingly distant from how she actually feels inside. Because in the world she lives in, a woman is expected to be always ready. Ready for surprise guests. Ready for small talk. Ready for gossip. Ready to serve coffee. Ready to hide the mess she spent the entire morning battling. Ready to act as though her life is effortless. The pressure is invisible, but it is constant. Her visitors do not know the strain in her shoulders from lifting laundry baskets. They do not smell the harsh cleaning chemicals still lingering in the air. They do not hear the internal monologue whispering, "Did I miss a spot? Do they see the dust on the mantel? Do I look tired? Do I look unprepared?" Because the role she plays demands perfection. This expectation did not originate from the people on her porch. It was woven into the culture in advertisements, showing spotless living rooms, in etiquette books telling women to always present a pleasant demeanor, in TV shows where mothers never appeared disheveled or overwhelmed. These messages shaped not just her habits, but the very architecture of her day. Every potential visitor became a judgment. And so she prepares for guests, even on days when no one knocks. She keeps the living room tidy, just in case. She keeps a plate of cookies ready, just in case. She keeps herself presentable, just in case. Her life becomes an unending performance of what society tells her a good woman should look like. But let us step back and see the emotional weight of this. Because when she opens the door to a neighbor, she is not simply greeting another person, she is inviting in all the expectations she carries. The expectation to be friendly. The expectation to entertain. The expectation to keep her home pristine. And the expectation to hide anything that does not fit the image. If the visitor steps inside, the performance intensifies. She apologizes for the small imperfections, even when the house is spotless. "Oh, ignore the mess," she says, "even if the floors shine. I have not had time to tidy today." She lies, though she has been cleaning for hours. These apologies are not for actual messes. They are for the fear of being judged. Visitors bring more than conversation. They bring comparison. The neighbor might casually mention how she waxed her floors yesterday. Another might brag about canning fresh preserves. Someone else might talk about how her children behave so well at church. Each comment, whether intended or not, becomes a quiet measurement of success or failure, and she absorbs all of it. She listens, nods politely, and feels the pressure settle deeper into her bones. Because in this world, women are not simply maintaining homes, they are maintaining reputations. Then there are the salesmen. In the 1,950 seconds, door-to-door sales were common. Vacuum cleaners, encyclopedias, sewing machines, cleaning supplies. Every product arrived with a rehearsed pitch and a smile. Salesmen expected her to be polite, attentive, maybe even impressed. She was encouraged to listen, to show interest, and often to buy things she did not need but felt obligated to consider. Because a good housewife takes care of her home, and taking care of her home means always being open to improvement. And buying a new appliance means she is doing her duty. It is a logic built on cultural pressure, not necessity. But perhaps the most emotionally complex visitors were the neighbors. Neighborhoods in the 1,950 seconds were tight, but not always kind. People knew each other's routines. Gossip traveled quickly, and small details were noticed. If she looked tired one morning, a rumor might bloom. If her yard was not trimmed carefully enough, someone might comment. If her children misbehaved in public, the story might spread long before she had a chance to catch her breath. So every time the doorbell rings, she braces herself. She never knows if this visit will be friendly, judgmental, performative, supportive, or competitive. She never knows whether she will leave the conversation feeling lighter or heavier. And because she is expected to be kind and welcoming at all times, she has no option to say, "Not today. I am exhausted. Not today. I have not cleaned yet. Not today. My mind feels scattered. Not today. I just need silence." In her world, boundaries are rare luxuries. The emotional labor of social expectations becomes its own invisible job. She must be pleasant, patient, attentive, and agreeable, even on days when she feels stretched thin. She must offer hospitality, even when she has nothing left to give. And she must do it without letting the strain show. Because beneath the surface of these interactions lies another unspoken rule. A woman's emotional stability is part of the home's presentation. If she looks stressed, the home looks chaotic. If she appears flustered, the family seems unstable. If she loses her composure, the illusion cracks. So she holds it all together. When the visitor finally leaves, she closes the door gently. She exhales slowly, letting out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. She looks around the house. Suddenly, seeing all the tasks, she paused to answer the door. The ironing waits. The dishes wait. The laundry waits. And despite losing half an hour or an hour to social expectations, she must pick up where she left off. Her home becomes both her workplace and her stage. Her body becomes both her tool and her costume. Her emotional balance becomes both her shield and her sacrifice. And through it all, she continues, quietly, faithfully, resiliently, without applause, without rest, without recognition. Because in the 1,950 seconds, the home was not just where she lived, it was where she proved herself every single day. By the time noon, sunlight fills her kitchen. The 1,950 seconds, housewife has already lived a full day, a day of labor, performance, responsibility, and quiet emotional endurance. And yet, she is only halfway through. Lunch still needs preparing. Laundry still needs folding. Beds still need making. The house still needs maintaining. And with every passing hour, the pressure builds, not lessens. It is in this part of her day that the medical world of mid-century America quietly slips into view, not as a villain, not as a savior, but as something far more complicated, a system that treated women's exhaustion as a flaw to be corrected, rather than a symptom of impossible expectations. Let us linger in this moment a little longer. She stands in her kitchen, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. The caffeine and morning stimulant are wearing off, leaving behind a mixture of jitteriness and fatigue that feels both heavy and hollow. She leans against the counter for just a second, a stolen moment, and rubs her temples as her mind swims with tasks she has not yet done. Just then, she feels the edge of something she can't quite name. Not sadness exactly, not fear, not despair, just a quiet trembling inside her chest, a sense of being stretched too thin. The lightheaded drift that comes after hours of moving faster than her body wanted to, doing more than any single person should do, thinking about everything at once. She knows this feeling. It is familiar. It arrives most days, around this time, in the 1,950 seconds. Doctors had a word for it. Nerves. Not burnout. Not mental strain. Not the result of managing an entire household without rest. Just nerves. And the treatment for nerves was not therapy, or support, or rest. It was pills. Little colorful tablets that promised steadiness, calmness, energy, sleep, or relief, depending on the hour. Pills that arrived in small bottles with cheerful labels. Pills that doctors prescribed without blinking, without asking deeper questions, without wondering whether exhaustion was a natural human response to the demands placed on women. Let us walk with her to the doctor's office. It is a quiet building on the corner of town, with polished floors and the faint smell of disinfectant. She sits in the waiting room, flipping through a magazine filled with advertisements showing smiling mothers, spotless homes, and miracle products that promise a better life. When she enters the exam room, she explains her symptoms tentatively. She does not want to sound dramatic. She does not want to sound ungrateful. She does not want to give the impression that she can't handle her responsibilities. So she says something small, almost whispered. I have been feeling tired. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed. It is hard to keep up. My mood has been a little unsteady. I can't sleep. She does not mention the guilt she feels when she looks around her home and sees only what still needs doing. She does not mention the fear of disappointing her husband, her neighbors, or herself. She does not mention the loneliness that grows in the quiet hours. But her doctor does not ask her to elaborate. In the 1,950 seconds, women's emotional experiences were rarely examined as psychological or social. They were framed as chemical imbalances, hormonal fluctuations, or simply a natural part of being a woman. So the doctor smiles and writes a prescription with the calm certainty of someone handing out a simple fix. He might prescribe a stimulant for energy, something to keep her alert and productive, or a tranquilizer, something to soften the edges of worry and lift her spirits, or both. He hands her the note as if it were a gift. Take one in the morning, he says, and another if you feel tense. This will help you keep up. This will make the days easier. This is what many women use. And that last sentence is the one that settles into her heart. Many women use this. Suddenly, she feels less alone. Suddenly, she feels understood, even though nothing about her life has changed. The doctor has not lifted any burdens from her shoulders, but he has offered something that appears to make them lighter. On the drive home, her pulse still feels too fast. But now she has hope folded inside her purse. The little bottle promises focus, calmness, clarity, all the qualities she believes she must embody to be a good wife and mother. Back in her kitchen, she opens the bottle and shakes one pill into her palm. It glints slightly in the light. She swallows it with water from the tap, hoping for relief. And soon, the edges of the world begin to sharpen again. Her limbs feel lighter. The fog in her mind lifts. The laundry seems manageable again. The dust does not look so overwhelming. The pile of tasks on her mental list feels doable. She does not think about side effects. She does not think about long-term impacts. She does not think about dependency, because no one has warned her. In the 1,950 seconds, pills were marketed as modern marvels, scientific miracles that could perfect the human experience. Ads featured glamorous women with bright eyes and luminous smiles, praising medications that kept them energetic, slender, calm, and cheerful. Even children's cough syrups featured ingredients no one today would ever hand to a child. In magazines, tranquilizers were sold as a secret weapon for the busy mother. Stimulants as a way to manage your figure while staying productive. Sleep aids as a way to recharge for your family. These were not just advertised, they were normalized. And when something is normalized, it becomes invisible. So she takes her pills without guilt, without hesitation, without fear. Because in her world, a woman who uses medication to cope is not failing. She is modern. She is efficient. She is responsible. Now, let us step inside her emotional world again. The pill begins to work gently at first. Her breath slows. The knot in her chest loosens. The familiar tightness in her jaw fades. She wipes the counter and feels, for the first time all day, that maybe she can handle everything after all. But beneath this relief is something else, something quieter and harder to articulate. The pills do not just help her manage tasks. They help her manage expectations. They help her survive a life built around silence. Silence about exhaustion. Silence about dissatisfaction. Silence about dreams she never had time to explore. The medication does not erase the demands of her world. It simply makes them feel more manageable. And because the 1,950 seconds mother is not encouraged to question the system she lives in, she never asks the deeper question. Why do I need medication to maintain a life that is supposed to be normal? She does not ask because no one else is asking. She does not challenge because challenges feel forbidden. She does not express her doubts because doubts sound like failure. Doctors provide pills instead of solutions. Society provides expectations instead of understanding. Advertisements provide illusions instead of support. So she keeps taking the pills. And as the little bottle empties, she will return to the doctor. He will refill the prescription. She will thank him. And the cycle will continue. Not because she is doing anything wrong, not because she is weak, but because she is trying to survive a system that tells her, you must do everything, and you must make it look easy. And she believes it, because no one ever told her she did not have to. By the time noon sunlight softens and stretches across the living room floor, the 1,950 seconds housewife reaches another turning point in her day, the moment when the private performance of keeping her home running shifts into the public performance of social life. And in the mid-century American suburb, Nothing captured this strange blend of community, pressure, friendship, and quiet competition quite like the Tupperware party. These gatherings were not just small events for selling plastic containers. They were social rituals, part networking, part entertainment, part emotional release, part subtle judgment. And for many women, they were one of the only moments they had to interact with other adults. Let us step into the living room with her. She checks the clock. 2 hours until the neighborhood ladies arrive. That means she must clean again, not the deep cleaning of morning chores, but the surface-level perfection expected for hosting. Cushions fluffed, magazine stacks aligned, ashtrays emptied, curtains straightened, coffee table wiped, until it reflects the light just enough to look polished, but not obsessive. She walks into the bathroom and notices a single towel not folded correctly. She refolds it. She rearranges the guest hand soap. She ensures there is no trace of the chaos her children left that morning. Hosting requires a kind of domestic choreography, and she performs it silently, efficiently, with a tension in her stomach that feels strangely familiar. Then comes her appearance. She heads to the bedroom, brushes her hair until it shines, reapplies powder to erase the sheen of stress on her forehead, smooths lipstick onto her lips, even though she knows it will fade during conversation. She changes out of her house dress into something nicer, not overly formal, but polished enough to send a message. I am doing fine. I am managing. I am keeping up. This is the unspoken first rule of social gatherings in her world. Appearances speak louder than words. When the first knock comes at her door, she opens it wearing the smile she has practiced for years, warm, inviting, unfailingly pleasant. Women step in one by one, carrying purses, casseroles, and the kind of polite curiosity that hides deeper layers: comparison, admiration, envy, camaraderie, and loneliness, all tangled like threads beneath their cheerful greetings. The air fills quickly with conversation compliments about dresses, remarks about children's antics, little confessions about husbands who left socks on the floor or worked too many hours. But beneath the surface chatter is a subtle dance. Every woman is scanning the room, measuring the cleanliness of the home, the freshness of the curtains, the neatness of the hostess's appearance. Not out of malice, but because this is how they have been taught to navigate womanhood, through observation, imitation, self-correction. Then the star of the night arrives, the Tupperware lady. She is charismatic, polished, and carrying a suitcase full of colorful plastic containers that promise to change your life. Her voice is bright, rhythmic, almost rehearsed. She displays lids, bowls, and airtight seals with the showmanship of a magician. She taps the tops to demonstrate the signature burp that guarantees freshness. She makes jokes. She praises the hostess. She flatters the guests. And the room lights up. The women lean forward. They laugh. They touch the containers. They whisper to each other. These parties are fun. They truly are. They offer a break from the monotony of housework, a chance to sit, talk, and be part of something that feels lively and modern. For a moment, she feels lighter. She enjoys the company. She feels seen. But the joy sits beside something else. Pressure. Pressure to host well. Pressure to buy something to support the hostess. Pressure to seem enthusiastic, even if money is tight. Pressure to keep up with neighbors who have newer kitchens, nicer curtains, or more fashionable dresses. Social life in this era is a polite game of comparison, disguised as friendship. She knows that next week she will attend a party at someone else's home. There, she will measure herself against another woman's decor, furniture, and hosting style. And she knows that woman will measure herself against hers. It is not competitiveness in the modern sense. It is something quieter, an urgent need to belong, a fear of falling behind, a longing to be admired, a craving for affirmation in a world that rarely praises women publicly. The Tupperware lady picks up a bright, green bowl and launches into a demonstration about storing leftovers. The women laugh, gasp, nod, and clap in the right moments. It feels theatrical, yet comforting. For a brief hour, the weight of the world lightens. The women feel connected. Then someone makes a joke about needing a bigger container to hold her husband's appetite, or about hiding cookies from sugar-loving kids. The room erupts in laughter, but under the jokes lies something real. The recognition that each woman is running a marathon of responsibilities that never ends. There is also the wine, or the cocktails, or the punch that is always stronger than it looks. A little drink makes the performance easier. It smooths the edges of self-consciousness. It creates a temporary softness where anxieties dissolve into shared humor and whispered confessions. Someone says she feels tired all the time. Another mentions she started taking little helpers her doctor prescribed. Someone else admits she cried in the pantry last week because the pressure was too much. And just like that, the room shifts. Not completely, but enough. For a few minutes, the women allow themselves to be honest in a way they never are with their husbands, their doctors, or their mirrors. They speak in coded language, careful not to reveal too much, yet revealing enough to feel the comfort of recognition. They all understand each other, even if they never say the words openly. This life is hard. We are doing our best. We are tired. But they also laugh, share recipes, swap tips, and compliment each other's dresses. They celebrate small victories, children learning to tie their shoes, husbands getting promotions, gardens blooming at the right time. It is a patchwork of joy stitched into the fabric of strain. When the party ends and the women gather their coats, shoes, and purchases, the housewife stands in the doorway waving goodbye. The warmth of companionship lingers in the air, but so does the exhaustion. As she closes the door, the silence returns. Her living room smells faintly of perfume and coffee. Dishes clutter the table. Wrapping paper litters the floor, and the temporary escape dissolves back into reality. The performance is over. Now she must clean again. She gathers cups, wipes the table, sweeps crumbs from the carpet. Her feet ache. Her back feels tight. Her head pulses softly from the mixture of chatter, pressure, and whatever she had to drink to steady her nerves. But in her heart, there is something bittersweet. A flicker of relief that she is not alone. A recognition that every woman on her street is carrying a similar burden. A reminder that shared laughter can briefly soften even the heaviest days. And yet, tomorrow, the expectations return. The perfect home. The perfect behavior. The perfect smile. She will rise again before the sun. She will push through again. She will host again. She will perform again, because that is what her world asks of her and what she has been taught to give. By late afternoon, the sun has shifted again, stretching long, warm beams across the kitchen floor. This is the hour when the housewife's world becomes noisy. Once more when the front door swings open, school bags drop to the ground, shoes scatter across the hallway, and children pour into the home like a small, unstoppable weather system. It is the beginning of the second storm of her day. For many women in the 1,950 seconds, this period, managing children from after school until bedtime, was a quiet battlefield. Not of violence, not of anger, but of sheer emotional endurance in a world that gave them almost no tools to work with. Let us settle gently into that moment, The children come home hungry. They always do. They drop their belongings in a trail behind them, jackets on chairs, crayons on counters, socks somehow ending up miles from their shoes. They are bubbling with stories, complaints, requests, minor injuries, forgotten assignments, and the endless emotional needs that children naturally carry. She listens, nods, and tries to absorb it all while stirring something on the stove, checking the clock, and mentally mapping out the next 3 hours. She has no Google to search solutions, no parenting books full of emotional language, no online communities where mothers share understanding, compassion, and survival tips. What she has is instinct, and what she feels is pressure, and what she offers is love, even when she is running on empty. Raising children in the 1,950 seconds meant relying heavily on discipline, structure, and routine. Society taught women that a good mother kept her children clean, quiet, respectful, and obedient. A child's behavior reflected directly on the mother's skill, worthiness, and moral standing. So she spends much of her afternoon acting as both guardian and referee. She settles arguments over toys. She negotiates homework battles. She finds the missing sneaker no one else cares enough to search for. She keeps track of everyone's moods, the crankiness after school, the sugar-driven energy, the sudden bursts of tears. And all the while, she tries to maintain the image of calmness, because mothers were expected to be emotional anchors, not emotional participants. But inside, she often feels overwhelmed. Children in this era had fewer structured activities, fewer educational supports, and far fewer emotional outlets. Outdoor play was common, even encouraged, but rarely supervised. Kids roamed neighborhoods, climbed trees, and invented elaborate games, which sometimes made her job easier, but often made it more stressful. Because while the children played outside, she had no real break. She had chores waiting, dinner waiting, a home that still needed managing, her own exhaustion humming beneath her ribs. And she also carried the constant worry. Are they safe out there? Are they getting into trouble? Will someone judge me if they see my kids playing too loudly or too freely? The world told her she should keep them busy, but the world never provided any tools. There were no educational psychology theories woven into school newsletters, no gentle parenting guides, no discussions about sensory needs, emotional regulation, or child anxiety. Just a general belief that children needed structure and discipline and that mothers should provide it flawlessly. So she relied on what she knew. Sometimes she distracted them with snacks when tempers flared. Sometimes she let them run outside until their energy burned off. Sometimes she bribed them with sweets or television, a tactic she felt guilty about even though it worked. Sometimes she raised her voice, not because she wanted to, but because the house felt too loud, too busy, too full, and she was only human. But in her mind, any slip in patience felt like failure, because the 1,950 seconds were cruel to mothers in subtle ways. They were expected to be gentle but firm, loving but efficient, playful but tidy, warm but never chaotic. Even their children's emotions were seen as reflections of their own inadequacy. If a child threw a tantrum, it meant she was not strict enough. If a child was shy, it meant she was not exposing them to enough social situations. If a child was messy, it meant she was not teaching discipline correctly. If a child cried easily, it meant she was coddling them. There was no winning. She wipes sticky hands, cleans scraped knees, sorts crayons by color, even though she knows they will scatter within an hour. She helps with homework, sometimes understanding it, sometimes pretending to. She reheats leftovers for one child while mixing a new pot of soup for another. Her body moves constantly, folding into the small domestic tasks that keep a family running. But her mind, it never stops. It tracks schedules, behaviors, meals, chores, and moods in one endless loop. It manages energy, hers, and the children's, like a fragile currency. It absorbs frustrations that are not hers. It absorbs emotions that are not hers. And it carries the weight silently. Because mothers in this era had no space to say, "I am overwhelmed. I am tired. I need help. I do not know what to do." Instead, they said things like, "It is just a busy day. They are just kids. I am fine." The same rehearsed lines women pass to each other generation after generation. And in a strange twist of tenderness, the children themselves often adored her completely, unaware of the emotional acrobatics she performed for them every day. They saw a mother who cared for them, fed them, listened to their stories, and loved them without question. They did not see the strain. They did not see the fear. They did not see the exhaustion. Children rarely do. She tucks these thoughts deep inside, behind the polite smile and the everything's under control tone she uses, even when nothing feels under control at all. As the afternoon light dims, she begins the timeless ritual of transitioning her children toward evening, cleaning up toys, turning off the radio, coaxing them to wash up, reminding them not to forget their schoolwork, smoothing their hair with tired but gentle hands. The day has been long already. She has been mother, teacher, referee, maid, cook, and emotional anchor. She has played every role flawlessly and invisibly. But the hardest hours are still to come. Dinner, bedtime, the quiet loneliness that settles after the house falls asleep. And she will face them the same way she faces every part of her life. Quietly, faithfully, without applause, without rest, without being asked how she feels. Her strength is not loud. Her strength is steady. Her strength is born from love, not luxury. She manages her children not with modern tools, but with instinct, endurance, and a heart stretched far beyond its limits. As the afternoon settles into early evening, the house shifts again. The sunlight softens, stretching itself across furniture in pale golden streaks. The noise from children begins to fade into a softer hum. There is a moment, small, delicate, almost imperceptible, when the day feels like it is loosening its grip. And for many 1,950 seconds, mothers, this moment marks the arrival of something both ordinary and quietly sacred. Cocktail hour. It is not an official rule, not printed in any magazine, but it exists as firmly as gravity, a daily ritual born from exhaustion, loneliness, social expectation, and a yearning for connection. The housewife has spent all day caring for others. Now, finally, here is the one sliver of time when she can care for herself, or at least pretend she is. She puts away the last of the afternoon dishes, wipes the countertop, and smooths her dress. She brushes her hair, reapplies a touch of lipstick, and straightens the pearl necklace that has become her daily armor. It does not matter that she has been cleaning all day. It does not matter that she feels rumpled and weary. Cocktail hour requires presentation. Because this is not just a drink. This is a performance. She sets out glasses on the sideboard, the fancy ones, the ones etched with thin lines of silver or gold. They were a wedding gift, or a housewarming present, or something she bought impulsively because the catalog promised that elegant glassware could elevate a life that rarely felt elegant. She fills the ice bucket. She arranges the bottles. She lays out coasters that match nothing, but were chosen because they looked cheerful in the store. And then she waits. Sometimes it is neighbors, sometimes friends, sometimes her husband returning from work. Occasionally it is just her alone with the quiet clink of ice and the low hum of the radio. But the ritual is the same. A moment to breathe. A moment to pretend she is more than a house of responsibilities held together by habit and hope. A moment to slip into the version of herself that the magazines promised she could be relaxed, charming, put together. She pours her first drink with steady hands. The glass sweats instantly in the warm room. The smell rises gin, citrus, or something sweet and amber. For the first time in hours, she sits down. Her body exhales. In suburban 1,950 seconds, America, cocktail hour was more than recreation. It was a kind of unspoken therapy, a shared ritual of relaxation and release that allowed people to momentarily escape the grind that came with maintaining picture-perfect lives. Neighbors drift in without needing an invitation. A gentle knock on the door, a friendly greeting, a familiar smile. Everyone arrives carrying their own version of exhaustion, but no one says it out loud. Instead, they talk about recipes, or lawns, or someone's new washing machine, or the daughter who might be gifted, or the husband who might be transferred to another office, or the neighbor whose roses look suspiciously too perfect. Small talk becomes a protective shell, a way to avoid the deeper truths, that they are tired, that they feel unseen, that they miss pieces of themselves they can no longer even name. The drinks help. They warm the chest, soften the edges, loosen the tongue. Not enough to cause scandal, just enough to make the evening feel lighter. For an hour, laughter becomes easier. Jokes land softer. The world seems less sharp. The mothers compare casserole failures. The husbands compare work frustrations. Somewhere in the corner, someone inevitably brings up the latest community gossip delivered in a whisper but soaked in fascination. It is a moment where adults can be human again. Not roles, not providers, not caretakers, not pictures in a catalog. Just human beings trying to navigate the strangest balancing act of their lives. Even the way people hold their drink says something. Some swirl gently, lost in thought. Some grip tightly, as if the glass steadies them. Some sip slowly, savoring the only quiet comfort they allow themselves daily. Some pour a little more generously, trying to mute a difficult day. And though no one speaks the truth openly, everyone feels it. This hour is survival disguised as sophistication. The children, sensing the shift in atmosphere, usually drift to another room or outside to catch fireflies, or to the den where cartoons flicker in black and white. The adults ensure the kids are fed or occupied, then breathe a collective sigh of relief. The conversations grow warmer. The stories grow bolder. Even the worries seem smaller under the soft influence of the evening's first drink. In fragile moments, a mother might catch herself staring at her glass, wondering if this ritual means something about her, something she is not supposed to think. But she pushes the thought aside. After all, she tells herself, everyone does this. It is normal. It is the culture. It is what the magazines show. It is what her friends do. It is part of the rhythm of the neighborhood. Eventually, her husband comes home. He steps through the door with the weariness of someone who has spent all day among fluorescent lights, paper stacks, and office politics. And even though she has worked equally harder, even she helps him shake off his day. She hands him a drink, listens to his stories, nods in the right places, laughs when he needs her to, because cocktail hour is not only for her, it is for both of them a way to transition from two separate worlds into one shared evening. They sit together. The room glows in warm shadows. Neighbors chat softly. The radio plays a song that is already slipping out of fashion. Ice clinks against glass like tiny bells. For a moment, everything feels peaceful. This hour becomes a bridge from public face to private life, from chaos to calm, from daily grind to nightly surrender. And when the moment finally ends, when the glasses are empty, and the guests gather their coats, and the children return from their temporary exile, the house shifts again. Dinner must be served. Homework must be finished. Arguments must be mediated. Bedtime routines await. The performance must continue. But she stands up feeling just a bit lighter than before. Not because the drink solved anything, but because, for one precious hour, she was not carrying everything alone. Cocktail hour gave her what society would not. A pause, a breath, a reminder that she was still a person. And sometimes, in a world that expected perfection at all times, that was the only help she ever got. The clock in the hallway ticks towards 6, each second landing with a soft, deliberate thud. This is the hour that carries its own kind of electricity. Not loud, not dramatic, but a quiet tension that settles over the house like an invisible curtain. Dinner is almost ready. Children are contained for now. The living room has been straightened. The kitchen smells like effort more than food. And somewhere in the driveway, the familiar rumble of a car engine announces the next act of her day. For a 1,950 seconds housewife, the return of her husband marks the beginning of a nightly performance. A ritual so embedded into the cultural DNA of the era that it feels scripted, rehearsed, perfected, even when she feels anything but. She takes a breath and looks around one last time. The cushions on the sofa straightened. The table set. The children warned. She smooths her dress, even though she has been wearing it since morning, and it carries the scent of stew, soap, and anxiety. She checks her hair in the hallway mirror, tucking a loose curl back into place. She reapplies lipstick, not because she wants to, but because she feels she should. The house is a stage. She is the leading actress, and the show must go on. When he steps through the door, his shoulders sag just slightly, the weight of the workday still clinging to him like dust. He sets his hat on the hook, pats the dog absently, and inhales deeply. "Smells good in here," he says. He always says it. It does not matter what she cooked. It does not matter if she burned something. It does not matter if dinner is pulled together from whatever cans she could find. He says it because it is part of the ritual. And she smiles, because that too is part of the ritual. The children rush to greet him, some with excitement, some with well-practiced politeness. She manages the energy, nudging them gently toward calmness. "Give your father a moment," she reminds them. "Let him sit down." He loosens his tie, steps into the living room, and scans the house with the instinctive gaze of someone checking the temperature of home. Not consciously, not critically, just assessing, just noticing. Is the house tidy? Are the kids calm? Does his wife look okay? And though he would never frame it as judgment, she feels judged all the same. Because the standards are invisible, yet heavy. He sits in his favorite chair. She brings him a drink. The children retreat again. This is the quiet before the evening storm. He asks the question He asks every night, "How was your day?" And she gives the answer she has been conditioned to give. "Oh, fine." Even on days when it was not fine. Even on days when everything felt like it was unraveling. Even on days when she cried quietly in the pantry so no one would hear. She does not tell him about the tantrums, or the burned lunch, or the mountain of laundry, or the exhaustion heavy in her bones, or the loneliness that sits with her even in a full house. It is not that she wants to hide these things. It is that she has been taught she must. A good wife handles things gracefully. A good wife does not trouble her husband. A good wife keeps the home peaceful. A good wife smiles through it. So she smiles, and she carries the weight, silently. He begins talking about his day, the office, politics, the new project, the coworker who tells long stories, the vending machine that only dispenses grape soda now. His world is linear, predictable, with defined hours and defined tasks. Her world is shapeless, expanding and contracting with the chaos of children, the unpredictability of domestic life, and the endless list of invisible responsibilities. And yet, each evening, these two worlds meet at the dinner table. When she calls the family to eat, she does so with a mix of pride and exhaustion. The meal is not perfect. It rarely is. But it is hers. Made with time, with care, with whatever energy she had left after the day. Took most of it. The children argue about who sits where. Someone complains about vegetables. Someone wants more bread. Someone spills their water. Someone says they are not hungry after begging for snacks all afternoon. She navigates all of it carefully, like someone maintaining balance on a narrow beam that stretches across a canyon. Her husband takes the first bite. She watches his face for a microsecond, looking for approval, reassurance, connection. He nods. It is good. Relief. A small victory in a day that has demanded 1,000 tiny ones. And then conversation begins, a blend of school stories, workplace anecdotes, reminders about upcoming appointments, and endless small moments that make up a household's heartbeat. But beneath it all, she is multitasking. Watching the children, keeping the peace, tracking the chore list in her head, thinking ahead to dishes, thinking ahead to bedtime, thinking ahead to tomorrow, thinking ahead to everything. After dinner, her husband retreats to the den to read, to unwind, to disconnect. She cleans the table. She washes the dishes. She puts away leftovers. She wipes the counters. She bathes the kids. She breaks up arguments. She searches for pajamas. She brushes tangles out of small heads. She soothes tears. She reads stories. She tucks each child into bed. By the time she returns to the living room, she is wrung out. The house is quiet. Her husband looks relaxed. And she feels for the first time all day the full weight of her own hunger for rest. This is the moment most mothers do not talk about. The moment when she sits down, alone, after being everything to everyone all day, and realizes there was no space for her. The moment when she realizes her marriage, like the rest of her life, has become a performance she delivers flawlessly, even when she feels like she is fading under the stage lights. She sits next to him on the couch. He reaches for her hand. The gesture is simple, gentle, and in that small warmth, she remembers something important. He is not the enemy. The expectations are. The world built around her magazines, social rules, neighborhood standards, cultural scripts, handed them both roles they did not fully choose. He was cast as the provider. She was cast as the caretaker, and every night they play out these roles because they are the only script they have ever been given. But in the silence of their living room, the quiet hum of the lamp, the ticking clock, the soft breathing of sleeping children down the hall, something real flickers between them. Something softer, something older than the house, something warmer than the expectations. Not performance, not perfection, just two people trying their best in a world that rarely asked what they actually needed. She leans her head on his shoulder. He kisses the top of her hair. And for a moment, there is no script, just humanity. And she holds on to that moment gently, knowing the next act begins again tomorrow, early, unrelenting, expected. But right now, in this quiet slice of evening, she lets herself simply exist. Not as the perfect wife, not as the perfect mother, not as the perfect hostess, just as herself. A woman trying to breathe beneath the weight of a life that demands more than any one person can carry. And somehow, she carries it anyway. The evening creeps forward slowly, like a soft curtain being drawn across the sky. The lamps glow with warm, golden halos. The house is quieter now, not silent, but quieter, as if it is exhaling after holding its breath all day. But for the 1,950 seconds, housewife, this hour is not rest. This is bedtime, a nightly ritual that tests her patience, her stamina, and the last reserves of gentleness she has managed to save throughout the day. She gathers her children with soft but firm instructions. Time to wash up, brush your teeth, find your pajamas, the clean ones, not the ones you hid under the bed. No, you can't have another cookie. Yes, you have to take a bath tonight. No, sweetheart, monsters are not real. Yes, I will check the closet anyway. In every household, bedtime has its own signature chaos, a mix of whining, stalling, negotiating, collapsing, arguing, and clinging. And although modern parents may recognize this battle instantly, the 1,950 seconds mother faces it with far fewer tools, far fewer resources, and far less emotional support. She has spent the entire day holding everyone else together. Now she must hold the night together too. The children splash water in the bathroom, leaving puddles on the floor. She kneels to wipe them up, her knees aching from a day spent on hard surfaces. Someone complains the bath water is too hot. Another says it is too cold. Someone refuses to brush their teeth unless she does it with them. Someone else suddenly remembers a school project due tomorrow. Her patience wears thin, but she keeps moving. Because in her world, a mother's patience is a moral currency. Losing it feels like failure. Showing frustration feels like admitting she is not enough. So she takes a slow breath and uses the last of her calm voice. She dries their hair, detangles, knots, finds the stuffed animal someone insists on sleeping with, picks up the toys scattered across the hallway, and gently guides everyone toward their rooms. The children finally climb into bed, soft sheets rustling like quiet sighs. She tucks each one in, individually smoothing blankets, straightening pillows, brushing hair from foreheads, kissing them goodnight, with tenderness that has survived even the toughest days. This is the part of motherhood she understands the best, the small rituals of affection that steady her world. She reads a story, sometimes two, sometimes three. Her voice grows softer. The room grows still. But children are masters of delaying sleep. Can I have a glass of water? My foot itches. I am not tired. Can you leave the hall light on? Can you stay a little longer? And she does, because leaving too soon might trigger tears, and tears might wake a sibling. And if a sibling wakes, bedtime resets like a harsh magic trick. So she sits at the edge of the bed, humming a tune her own mother hummed to her decades ago, a tune she did not fully understand then, and still does not. A tune that sounds like routine but carries centuries of tired mothers in its melody. Eventually, the children settle. Their breathing deepens. Their small bodies relax. Their rooms finally fall into a soft, fragile silence. She tiptoes out, standing in the hallway for a moment, listening. This is her favorite sound. The sound of peace she worked so hard to create. But peace comes with a price. Because now that the noise is gone, now that no one needs her hands, her voice, her attention, her thoughts begin to stir, she returns to the kitchen to finish the work left over from dinner. The plates clink against the sink. The water runs warm. The house smells faintly of soap and leftovers. It looks peaceful. It feels peaceful. But inside her chest, a low hum begins, a hum she knows well. It is the hum of unspoken worries. It always arrives at night, when the house grows quiet and the day stops distracting her. She wipes the counter, but her mind wanders. Is she doing enough? Is she raising her children right? Is she falling behind other mothers who seem more put together? Why does she feel tired in a way she can't explain? Why does she sometimes feel lonely even when the house is full? Why does happiness feel like something she must perform instead of something she experiences? No one taught her to talk about these things. No one taught women of her era to name their anxieties. They were taught to smooth them over like wrinkles in a tablecloth. Her nighttime thoughts drift into all the corners she avoids in daytime. The pressure to be perfect. The fear of disappointing her husband. The exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to solve. The longing to have a moment truly to herself. She finishes the kitchen. She turns off the lights. She walks slowly through the house, checking locks, adjusting windows, putting away stray toys, setting things in order for the next morning. The house looks calm, but inside her, the calm is fragile. When she finally sits down, truly sits, with no tasks in front of her, she feels something she avoids naming. Emptiness. Not the dark kind, not the despairing kind, just the soft, hollow quiet that comes from spending every bit of herself throughout the day. Her husband is in his chair, reading or watching television. He glances at her with affection, unaware of the internal world she is navigating. She does not blame him. He has never been taught to look beneath the surface either. She sits on the couch, legs tucked underneath her, and tries to relax. She tries to let the day slip off her shoulders. She tries to slow her mind. But the truth is, rest does not come easily to her, because nighttime, for many women of this era, was the only time their minds had space to think, and that space often filled itself with everything suppressed during the day. Tiny mistakes, replaying, fears about children, money worries, marital worries, thoughts about aging, thoughts about who she once was, thoughts about the woman she might have become if expectations were gentler. They swirl softly, like dust caught in lamplight. She does not speak these thoughts aloud. They feel too heavy, too complicated, too ungrateful, too inappropriate for the world she lives in. So she sits quietly. She pretends she is fine. She pretends she is relaxed. She pretends this moment is enough to refill what the day has taken. Eventually, she heads to bed. She changes into a nightgown. She washes her face. She lies beside her husband. He falls asleep quickly, within minutes. Sometimes, she envies that, because her mind continues to wander long after the lights go out. She thinks about tomorrow's chores, tomorrow's meals, tomorrow's expectations, and the day after that, and the week after that. Her mind races even as her body begs for rest. It is strange. The quiet of night makes her feel both safe and exposed, both soothed and unsettled, both grateful and overwhelmed. This is the secret life of her nights. A world no one else sees. A world she is never asked about. A world she carries alone. And yet she endures. She rises the next morning. She tries again. She keeps the world turning for everyone she loves. She gives more than she ever receives. She pours herself into each new day, even when the night before left her restless. Because beneath the exhaustion, beneath the worry, beneath the quiet tremble in her chest, is love. A love expressed not in grand gestures, but in routines, rituals, and sacrifices too ordinary for history books to record. By the time the house finally settles into the soft hush of night, when even the radio has gone silent and the children's rooms are still, the 1,950 seconds housewife often finds herself standing alone at the bathroom mirror. The light above it is warm but unforgiving, illuminating every line of tiredness, every shadow beneath her eyes, every reminder that the weight of the day has left marks on her face. She studies her reflection not out of vanity, but out of habit, habit shaped by magazines, advertisements, and the cultural drumbeat that has followed her for years. Because for women of her era, the mirror is not simply a glass surface. It is a scoreboard. It is a reminder. It is a quiet judge. And the voice she hears in her head as she gazes at herself is not her own. It belongs to the glossy pages stacked neatly on her nightstand. Ladies' Home Journal, Woman's Day, Better Homes and Gardens, McCall's. These magazines do more than entertain. They instruct. They teach her the rules of womanhood in a language so gentle and polished that she barely notices how deeply it cuts. The rules are simple, but impossibly demanding. Look beautiful, but natural. Cheerful, but calm. Thin, but well-fed. Youthful, but motherly. Polished at all hours. As she observes her reflection, she remembers the models in advertisements, the women in perfectly cinched dresses, with flawless hair and bright eyes, smiling as they vacuum carpets or prepare elaborate meals. Their homes shine. Their husbands adore them. Their children appear angelic. They are never sweaty from cleaning, never stained from cooking, never frazzled from managing a household's chaos. And she can't help but wonder, why do not I look like that when I do the same things? Why do I look tired when they look radiant? Why does their life seem effortless while mine feels like wading through invisible weight? She does not know that the women in those photos are models, that the houses are staged, that entire teams of lighting technicians, photographers, stylists, and editors craft each illusion. She only knows the feeling like she is falling behind in a race she did not sign up for. Hollywood reinforces the same message. At the movie theater, she watches actresses glide across the screen, graceful, glowing, untouched by reality. These women wake up in full makeup, argue elegantly, cry beautifully, and fall asleep without a single hair out of place. Even in scenes where they are tired, they still look better than she does on her best days. She tells herself she knows it is fiction. She tells herself these are not real women. But the images still press into her mind, shaping her expectations, shaping her self-critique, shaping the silent pressure she carries with her. Every ad she has ever seen whispers the same chorus: be beautiful, be graceful, be effortlessly perfect. And every time she fails to live up to that impossible standard, she quietly blames herself. She thinks about the weight loss ads she sees constantly: pills, tonics, diets, exercise machines. They promise that with just a few more steps, a few more sacrifices, a few more dollars, she can become the version of herself she believes she is supposed to be. She flips through a magazine and sees a full-page spread of a glamorous woman kneeling next to an oven, hair immaculate, makeup flawless, smile unwavering. The headline reads something like, "Make your family proud. Look your best while doing your best." The message is clear. If she is exhausted, she should hide it. If she is struggling, she should conceal it. If she feels insecure, she should fix it not by changing her life or lightening her burdens, but by buying products designed to make her look less tired while carrying the same impossible load. Perfume ads suggest that a better scent can fix a strained marriage. Makeup ads suggest that a new lipstick shade can cure loneliness. Cleaning product ads tell her that a truly happy home smells like lemon or pine. Even appliances, vacuum cleaners, washing machines, blenders, are marketed as tools that will make her life joyful, as if mechanical convenience alone could fill the emotional gaps left by isolation and overwork. And because these messages are everywhere, she begins to believe them. Not in a conscious way, not with critical thought, but in the subtle, quiet way that repetition shapes the mind. She believes she should look younger. She believes she should eat less. She believes she should smile more. She believes she should be grateful. She believes exhaustion is a flaw. She believes rest is indulgent. She believes that if she is struggling, something is wrong with her, not with the expectations placed upon her. This pressure wraps itself around her daily routine. When she dresses in the morning, she feels it. When she cooks dinner, she feels it. When she runs a cloth across the kitchen counter for the 5th time in a day, she feels it. It is not simply the voice of culture. It becomes the voice inside her own mind. Even her interactions with other women are shaped by these ideals. At neighborhood gatherings or church events, she studies not just outfits and hairstyles, but the subtle signs of how well other women are managing their lives. Are their children better behaved? Are their homes tidier? Do they look more rested, more fashionable, more radiant? And she knows they are studying her in return, not out of cruelty, but because every woman has been taught that comparison is part of survival, like checking a compass in a foggy forest where no clear direction exists. She also knows that the women she admires are likely struggling in the same quiet ways she is, but no one admits it. To admit it would be to violate the unspoken rule of the decade. Never let anyone see you slip. So they compliment each other's dresses, pretending not to notice the small signs of fatigue in the corners of each other's eyes. They exchange recipes, pretending not to notice the quiet strain behind each other's smiles. They perform elegance, pretending it is not performance. When she finally sits on the edge of her bed at night, brushing her hair in slow strokes, she is left with the quiet ache of always feeling behind the magazines, behind the movies, behind the cheerful fictional version of herself she is supposed to embody. She does not know that millions of women feel the same way. She does not know that decades later, historians will look back and see clearly what she cannot name now, that she is living in a world built on illusions, expectations, and polished fantasies of femininity. She only knows the feeling, soft, persistent, unspoken. Maybe, if I try harder, I can finally become who the world wants me to be. But in the deepest part of her heart, beneath the layers of performance and pressure, something small and true still flickers, the hope that maybe she already is enough, even if no one has ever told her so. Long after the children have fallen asleep, long after the dishes have dried on the rack, long after the last lamp has been switched off in the living room, she returns to her quiet rituals. The house is dark now, save for the soft yellow glow of a single bedroom lamp. She moves through the silence with the familiarity of someone who has learned every creak in the floorboards, every shift in the air, every rhythm of the night. She thinks she is alone, but she is not really. She is carrying with her the unseen strength that countless women before her carried too, a strength that will never be named in magazines or measured by society, but one that has always existed, tucked beneath the surface of their days like a hidden thread holding everything together. It is in this gentle hour, when the demands of the world finally loosen their grip, that her quiet resilience becomes clearest. Not dramatic, not triumphant, not the kind of strength sung about in ballads or written into history books. It is a softer kind of endurance, a strength built not from grand gestures, but from countless invisible acts, the lunches packed, the tears dried, the arguments diffused, the dinners prepared, the fears swallowed, the expectations met, the disappointments hidden, the apologies made, the smiles forced, the dreams deferred. Each tiny burden she carries might seem insignificant on its own, but together they form something immense. She sits at the edge of her bed for a moment, the silence wrapping around her like a blanket she did not know she needed. Her shoulders drop slightly. Her spine curves in fatigue. Her breath slows. This is the first time all day she allows herself to feel, and what she feels is complicated, not unhappiness, not bitterness, but the ache of existing in a role that asks for everything while offering very little space for her humanness. She thinks back on the day, the chaos of the morning, the endless chores, the improvised parenting, the performance of politeness at afternoon gatherings, the quiet tension of evening routines, the anxieties that rose when the house fell still. And yet, beneath all of it, there is something else too: pride. A small, steady warmth that lives somewhere deep inside her chest. The pride of keeping a home alive. The pride of nurturing the people she loves. The pride of holding chaos together with nothing more than her bare hands and her stubborn tenderness. She does not call it resilience. She does not call it strength. She does not call it sacrifice. She does not call it anything at all, because the women of her time were not taught to name their endurance. They were taught to normalize it, to tuck it into their aprons, to iron it into crisp tablecloths, to steer it into dinner pots. But resilience, whether acknowledged or not, still exists, and hers runs deep. She gets up and walks to the window. Outside, the street is quiet. A lone street lamp glows at the corner, casting soft halos across the pavement. Now and then, a car passes by, its headlights gliding across the walls like distant ghosts. She rests her hand on the cool glass and lets herself imagine a world where the expectations were lighter, where she did not have to be everything at once, where she could simply be a person messy, flawed, tired, curious, hopeful, growing. It is a small dream, but it feels dangerous somehow. In her world, wanting more can feel like discontent, and discontent can feel like betrayal. So she holds the dream gently, like a fragile thing she is not sure she is allowed to keep. But still, she keeps it, because resilience does not only mean surviving the day. Sometimes it means quietly wanting something better, even when you can't name it yet. She steps away from the window and moves through the house one last time, checking locks, adjusting blankets, straightening chairs. These gestures might seem mundane, but there is tenderness in them. Each movement says, "I am here. I am taking care of us." Her resilience is stitched into her routines. Every repetition of care is a small declaration that she refuses to let the world harden her. When she finally lies down beside her husband, the room dark around them, she releases a long breath. Her body aches. Her mind flickers with leftover worries. But her heart, somehow, still finds a slow, steady rhythm. She is tired. Yes, bone tired. Soul tired. But beneath the fatigue is a quiet, unyielding pulse of endurance. Tomorrow will be the same. The same demands, the same expectations, the same invisible labor. But she will rise again. She always does. Not because she is expected to, but because something inside her refuses to let the house fall apart, refuses to let the day defeat her, refuses to let the people she loves face the world without her care holding them steady. It is easy to overlook this resilience. It is quiet. It does not shout. It does not ask for recognition. It does not bend the world or rewrite history. But it holds families together. It keeps households functioning. It shapes the childhoods of entire generations. It anchors a world that often takes women for granted. And though she will never say it, though she may not even recognize it, every night when she finally closes her eyes, she embodies a truth stronger than any advertisement, any expectation, any idealized image. She is enough. She has always been enough. Her worth was never in her hair, or her dress, or her spotless kitchen. Her worth was in the way she stayed day after day, year after year, holding everything together with love disguised as routine. She sleeps, finally, the quiet resilience beneath her ribs still glowing like a small ember. A strength uncelebrated, but enduring. A strength unseen, but unmistakably real. A strength generations later will look back on and recognize as extraordinary, even though she never thought it was. And so, as we gently close the final pages of tonight's journey, we are left with something quieter and deeper than a simple portrait of 1,950 seconds, domestic life. We are left with a reminder of how much strength can exist in silence, how much love can hide inside routine, and how many stories live between the unspoken spaces of everyday life. The world she lived in was not easy. It was not gentle. It was not forgiving. Yet she carried it every chore, every expectation, every unseen responsibility with a grace that history rarely pauses to acknowledge. Her resilience was not loud. It did not stand on a stage. It did not ask for anything. It simply existed, woven into the rhythm of her days, like thread through fabric. Maybe that is the true heart of her story. That beneath the polished advertisements, behind the perfect smiles, under the cultural pressure and the long, exhausting schedules, there was a woman doing her best with the tools she had, in a world that demanded more than anyone should have to give. And she kept going anyway. As the lights dim tonight, and your breath settles into its natural rhythm, I hope this story leaves you with a little softness for yourself, for the people who raised you, for the generations who came before us and carried far more than they ever said out loud. Thank you for spending this quiet moment with me, wandering through a life shaped by duty, tenderness, and quiet strength. Sleep well, take care of your heart, and may tomorrow meet you with gentler expectations. Good night, everyone.